emerging machine intelligences, and anyone I haven't mentioned yet. Last year, we talked about chickens in video games and how they're beyond interesting. I know, it's so fun. But at the time, my project was wrapping up, and today we have something new and special for you. We're beyond thrilled to present the beginnings of a bit of brain research, which is quite meaty, even if not necessarily in meat space.
So the way we're going to run this today is we're going to give you a lovely talk, and if you'd like to ask questions, we're going to make it easy for you, so you don't have to get up and stand in front of the audience and say stuff. All you have to do is with your web browser on your mobile device, please log into slido.com, and when it asks you for the prompt, stick the number in and you'll be able to ask questions. Don't feel like you have to do this now. We've got some reminders of the details as we go through the talk, but just to make it easier for you. And also we can follow up with a podcast episode or something at the end if we don't get to everybody.
Obviously, if you do not have a web-enabled device, you are more than welcome to ask questions the old-fashioned way, if we have time at the end after the talk. So we're your hosts.
So, Dr. Fothergill over here is an archaeological scientist who has recently taken a post as a research fellow on the Human Brain Project, a ginormous European Commission project that creates an infrastructure for neuroscience and IT. How did she get that job?
I might have something to do with chickens.
Yeah, maybe.
This is Dr. Catherine Flick, an applied philosopher with a toga to prove that she's a philosopher.
And a beard.
She has a beard. If you can't see it, then you might be a philosophical zombie. Anyway, she's a reader at De Montfort University. That's the equivalent of a tenured professor here, who researches and teaches on the ethics of emergent technology, exciting stuff like AI, increasing access, representation, and more.
So in different ways, both of us look at issues to do with responsible research and innovation in technology. That's not quite so important right now, but it will be.
So, what are we going to do today? Well, we'll talk about what a zombie is and how they are depicted in video games, plus a quick disclosure about what we won't be talking about, mostly for the sake of time today. Then we'll introduce you to some new zombie friends, including philosophical zombies and archaeological zombies. This will be followed by a quick jaunt through medical and scientific ethics. Here's the outline here of what we're going to be doing. We'll talk about the Human Brain Project and responsible research and innovation. And finally, we will strategize about how together we can prevent the zombie apocalypse. Maybe. I mean, probably not at this point, right? I mean, we're basically on the Terran Empire timeline. Yeah? Okay. Right, sorry. Anyway, what are zombies? Well, they serve a really important function in video games. And according to ancient video game lore, were first deployed to make games marketable in regions where it was illegal to depict shooting humans. So, just make the blood green, and bam, all sorted. But green blood, I mean, won't somebody think of the Vulcans? Sorry, I wasn't meaning to make so many Star Trek jokes right at the beginning. But, in video game context, there was a quote I came across while doing the research that sums it up really well. One of the last groups of politically correct massacre, there's something pleasing about defending humanity from a horde of the undead. So, apart from that specific feel-good function, what is a zombie? Why do they capture our imaginations? And frankly, what unites all, or at least most, of zombie kind? And are they really actually scary? So all zombies occupy a special position at an ontological threshold, by definition a condition or state of being. In a modern or recent historical framework, they are both animate and dead, and have a sort of personal power or agency without possessing consciousness. And control is generally either misplaced or misaligned, which is very compelling for narratives and storytelling, and is a very interesting twist on what I think of as the first zombie, the Taino concept of simi or zimi. More on that in a little bit.
So zombies are undead, and they were once living, and they now aren't quite that. So there's a lot of grey areas and grey matter when it comes to zombies. Sorry, we couldn't do a talk without bad puns. I mean, if there were a formal scientific taxonomic classification and nomenclature system for the undead, zombies would be extremely varied, but not terribly complex. So in case you're wondering, there's a guy out there named Jason B. Thompson, or @Mockman on Twitter, who has made a very, very stylish zombie taxonomy poster, which we think is amazing.
There are many types of zombies within the state of being concept, and in video games, the most typical are your shambling hordes, but then you have special zombies that take a lot of damage, or wear a hat, or ride you off a building, what have you, and sometimes zombies are zombie-like heroes, a few of which are revenants, which are a bit special. Now, those guys have consciousness. They have consciousness, so maybe they're not really zombies. It's confusing. Zombies are excellent allegories for all kinds of things going wrong. So, are they actually, scary? Only in the many and nearly infinite ways in which we are. That's deep.
So, we're going to have to talk a little bit about the stuff that we're not going to talk about, which is very scientific and also philosophical, so it's a twofer. One elephant in the room, of course, is George Romero. He was, of course, a complete legend. His works and his creations were incredibly important to the modern idea of zombies. He was the father of the zombie movie, and his zombies have inspired a vast and scintillating universe of zombies, including many video game zombies. But neither of us is a cinema or Romero expert, and we'd like to do him justice, so we decided to focus on different zombies for today. The other extremely important things that we will not be talking about today are Haitian Vodou religious practices. We are neither qualified to speak about this, nor do we think it's really appropriate or reasonable to attempt to describe the influence of a religion which has historically been misinterpreted and misappropriated repeatedly in connection with some investigations of zombie origins, often in kind of a racist way. We're also not really going to speak on disease or the effects of neurotoxins or any combo of those things. Yeah. Let's do some fun stuff now, Tia.
Okay, fun stuff. Right. Ready?
Let's get it. Oh, it's a graph. That's not so
Graphs are fun! No?
I'm a philosopher, not a mathematician.
Is that kind of another Star Trek joke? I don't know. Star Trek. Okay. Not too long with the graphs. But I missed my previous life, so I conducted some research on zombie-related games recently listed on Steam. So the total number of games in this sample was 19,550. Of these, 497 games are tagged zombie. Within that group, there are some interesting patterns that tell us a bit about the core essence, or the platonic ideal maybe, of what it is to be a zombie video game. So we can do this by comparing the set of 4 Steam games mentioned before to the set of zombie games. This is about representation in games at a large scale, from least represented over on the left-hand side to overrepresented on the right. You have casual games all the way to action games. So whilst there are casual zombie games, there are far less represented than action zombie games. And of course, are there ever zombie games about surviving? I mean, usually games are about surviving zombies. So there you go. Here's another. If we look at what other tags co-occur with zombie in these 497 games, so comparing the average game, what ideas align with zombies in the form of tags? On the left side, a negative value, so if it's tagged zombie, it's 5 times less likely to be a sport game, for example. I know, shocking. I'm thinking, there's all those football or soccer things going on, and I was just like, I'm imagining sort of a team of zombies trying to play football. Yeah, okay. But yeah, on the other hand, if you look at the apocalypse, everybody, a zombie game is 10.5 times more likely to be post-apocalyptic than the average game. What these two graphs have shown is that zombie games differ from the average Steam game with regard to an overrepresentation of games that involve shooting, action, gore, horror, survival, and also multiplayer or co-op games. This works really well with other depictions of zombies in media, film, comics, television. We're in this together at the time of the apocalypse, defending humanity, in the words of that IGN reviewer. Plus, as a bonus, zombies give you something you can shoot without consequence. Finally, in terms of getting to grips with the overall zombie picture, I analysed 148 zombie games dating from 1982 to pre-release. Of these, I could determine the types of zombies featured and what caused the zombies through playing the game, watching Let's Plays, reading reviews, Wikipedia, etc., in 116 and 68 cases respectively. So these will not add up to 100% like many things in life. Because some games feature multiple types of zombies, like a classic shambling horde, plus some special types near the end, or they have both an evil ritual and irradiation, or something like that. Thus, Venn diagrams. Across 116 games, these aren't really graphs. Good. Most of these featured some kind of zombie horde, many of which travel at varying speeds. More than a quarter of games I looked at had special zombies with traits of 26%. Some 13% of zombie games I looked at featured some kind of zombie hero or heroic companion, sort of a benign zombie of some kind. And only in a few cases do we get something special, like a redhead or a zombie hero seeking revenge, redemption, or some other sort of post-mortem fulfillment. There was but a single zombie villain, and that's in Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge. We'll see if it's meant to be ironic, because undead villains and bosses are meant to be exceptional, like a vampire lord or a lich or some other really awesome thing. And zombies are unexceptional, right? They're everywhere. And Catherine will speak on that more soon. So of the 148 games I looked at in more detail, I was able to find out what causes zombie in about half of the cases, 46%. But some games have multiple types of or methods of zombification. So more than 2/3 of the time, it's a biological agent of some kind. A virus, a fungus, a bacterium, non-specific infection or outbreak. More than a third of games, 36%, have zombies directly caused by irresponsible science. No. Right? We'll get onto that more later.
None are caused by philosophers, though.
I know.
No. Well, I don't know. I mean, rituals?
Just wait, we'll get to the philosophical ones.
Oh yeah, we will. Those are really exciting and terrifying. Right, anyway, moving on. 23% of zombies were caused by supernatural force, profane ritual, necromancy, an artifact, demonic involvement, that kind of thing. At the bottom we have aliens, who caused a mere 6% of zombies in the games that I looked at. So, slackers, come on, you could do better than that. To reflect briefly on the issue of the biological agent, this sort of medical category. As the primary means of zombie production, the very frequent use of words like outbreak and infection, and indeed the rarity with which zombification is properly curable, tap into fears of at least medieval origin around unstoppable contagion by miasma or other forms of transmission. Makes it a very effective narrative device. So, classic, Left 4 Dead 2, one of the standout icons of this. It has everything one expects from the tagging analysis. Post-apocalyptic, we have the irony of the no mercy level, right? Zombies in a hospital, lol. You have to survive both hordes of zombies and special types of zombies. I tried playing it, it's not my typical game. And I had a pretty good time, actually, and I shot all my friends. I just axed them in the back.
Alright, so zombies are humans with their agency removed through death, right? The same stimuli work on all, so they usually need brains. They usually detect through some sort of sound or heat or some other method, sight maybe sometimes if they have eyes left. They exist primarily to satisfy their physical needs. They often have laws of physics unto their own, such as holding together of flesh in some sort of way that seems quite physically bizarre. They can usually move in certain ways and often in special ways as well. And they still seem to have some sort of digestive system working. I don't know how the brains get processed otherwise. But for the most part, they're unrecognizable hordes, but sometimes they are loved ones that go through some sort of changing process. And this loved one may also beg for death, like real death, before they change, which is a fairly common trope. The fact that you could become a zombie yourself through some sort of process brings this closer to home and shows this othering process from loved one to zombie. So, a philosophical zombie is basically a human without consciousness. It behaves like a human, it has human-like experiences, so it can process experiences such as sight and smell, etc. It can have memories, and it can process thoughts. However, it cannot consciously experience what it is like to actually smell coffee beans roasting. It can process the smell and identify it as coffee, but it doesn't actually experience it consciously. This basically illustrates the problem of what is it to actually be human? What is it to be conscious? And how do we know if other minds are conscious or not? Tia, are you conscious? We can only know that we're conscious ourselves through our own experiences, right? So we can't actually work out if other people are conscious or not. This basically is used as a counter-argument against philosophical arguments for physicalism, which states that human nature can be explained through physical characteristics, i.e. the structures of the brain, or the nature side of this nature-nurture debate. So a guy called David Chalmers, who I've had the privilege of working with, came up with the idea of these philosophical zombies, and he argues that since philosophical zombies are physiologically identical to humans, even the logical possibility of them existing is an argument against physicalism. Of course, Daniel Dennett says that they are logically incoherent and impossible, but I'm on the side of the zombies. Soma is probably the best example out there of a P-zombie game. It has a lot of zombie elements in the classic sense, so horror aspects and lighting, etc., but it asks a lot of tough questions about quite deep philosophical issues and confronts the player with uncomfortable scenarios that may well be possible in the future. In Soma, you play as Simon 2, a reanimated corpse with Simon's memories, experiences, and thoughts all in a chip in your brain. Simon 2 is a direct copy of Simon's brain, who died in a car accident. It behaves like Simon, it has all of Simon's experiences and memories, it thinks like Simon. So this basically makes it a human without consciousness, a philosophical zombie. Our understanding of zombies as a narrative device has everything to do with what they mean to us and what they symbolize to us. That in turn comes from our rich and varied experiences over time as a species. So let's explore some archaeological evidence for how the dead were understood post-mortem, in terms of not so physical remains as well as physical remains. This tells us a lot about perceptions of life after biological death, about how the power of personhood, which is linked to identity or agency, maybe a form of consciousness, is perceived after death, and that there was perceived to be power and agency in specific corpses or portions of corpses. So there are anatomical Bronze Age cremations from parts of Europe, including what is now Germany. This means that when someone died, their cremated ashes were put in a ceramic vessel, but that those ashes were in order. They didn't just torch the person and put them in the pot and then put the pot in the ground, which is kind of what we do now, but they put them in an order. So when you do micromorphometric studies of these cremations, there are bits of toe bones at the bottom, followed by little bits of leg bones, followed by like pelvic fragments, and then rib fragments, and the bits of the cranium are placed on the top. So why is this interesting? Well, according to Katerina Rebay-Salisbury, who's a Bronze Age expert par excellence, it's basically a specific understanding of the cremated remains as a person still. So in other words, whilst death is this transformation, it's literally the bodily aspects of personhood are still preserved. They're unaffected. And this person still needs to stay in order, right? So the extension of personhood and personal power or agency outside of corpse is evident from the ways in which it could be punished. So, the Romans had damnatio memoriae, which is the condemnation of memory, a fate worse than death. So these are memory sanctions, effectively erasing people from inscriptions, mosaics, murals, defacing statues, removing them from history and records, purging them from existence. After Septimius Severus died, his sons were supposed to rule jointly, but Caracalla was not keen on this. So, okay, my family is, nobody has the perfect family, but let's just say that your brother is not trying to murder you all throughout Saturnalia, right? I mean, that would be Christmas for us, so leave it now. Or maybe they are, okay. Anyway, he murders his brother in Gaeta in 199 in a really horrible way. And clearly, this was not enough. He enacted damnatio memoriae, and everyone had to chisel him off various things. And people complained about it, which is the best. An Egyptian example of this is Queen Hatshepsut, a female pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, that's 1500-ish BC, more or less, whose statues were defaced and her name removed from inscriptions and papyri by her successors because her memory alone was a threat to their legitimacy. So this created what Egyptologists call the Hatshepsut problem, where huge swaths of information are now inaccessible and will never know exactly the context of certain things because the ruler is missing. So, the Taino Themi is a good candidate for an idea that may have shaped the broad sort of uber-zombie category of animate, unliving things that are along some kind of a continuum of power, agency, and control. This is a sensitive thing. This is not my story, but it's important and it's relevant. History is written by the conquerors and the colonizers, and this should not be overlooked. So the Taino are indigenous peoples of the Caribbean. Their Semi or Zimi are many things at once. They're considered by some to be spirits,
icons or idols, with the lattermost classification really smacking of ethical imperialism. And I'll give what I think is a pretty reasonable definition, but there's a linguistic angle on this. There's an anthropologist named Neil Whitehead who thinks that the word thimieva, which literally translates as spirit in flesh material, is quite an excellent potential origin word for a zombie. At least no less likely word than the Congo words for a powerful object or a deity, Mumbi or Nzambi. So, what is a zemi? Well, to quote Jose Oliver, who studied them for decades, it is a condition of being. It is not a thing, it is a numinous power, a driving or vital force that compels action, the power to cause, to effect, and also denoting a condition or state of being. So, here's two examples of things classed as zemi. In 1498, a Spanish friar named Ramon Pane was dropped off on one of the many islands of the Caribbean to make observations on the local local culture in order to facilitate conquest. There was only a process. Whilst he was there, he observed a practice wherein a recently dead person was reanimated to answer questions about what killed them. So we don't know what Fray Pane was thinking, or explicitly trying to accomplish through this, so grains of salt at the ready. And another is the semi de algodón, or the cotton semi. This is conventionally referred to as a reliquary, which isn't really accurate. The named semi is just one example of these things that has survived. So they've been excavated from archaeological sites, and they were taken away to Europe as curios, which is how the semi de algodón ended up in a museum in Turin. Physically, they're really beautiful. This one's an embroidered cotton figure. It's formed around the bones of the dead after they've been sort of semi-finished, we'll say. Once complete, they take up a very special, potent state of being, wherein they can be consulted and take action. And both of these ideas of semi have power and agency, which are not aligned in a conventionally expected manner. So I want to mention that while it's clear that the nature of someone's personhood and agency changes after death, and that determining when death is seems to be a medical matter, which is very much up for debate. The Human Brain Project folks, especially in ethics and society, spend a lot of time talking about when death is. From a medical perspective, how long death takes is a cultural matter. So there are Bronze Age tombs in Sardinia that incorporate living and sleeping areas so that the dead could be visited and lived with in like an up-close and personal manner. The Malagasy Famidihana, which is a funerary practice where every 5 to 7 years, the dead are lovingly brought out, rewrapped, and danced with to live music. And I think it's actually quite beautiful and touching, but the tradition seems to be on its way out. I mentioned this issue of zombies and their connection to unexpected power or agency. The Hand of Glory, or should I say the Hands of Glory, are a manifestation of this, but there are more than one Hand of Glory.
So let's begin with the rather mediocre wondrous item from Dungeons and Dragons, which is wondrous, yes. So according to the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Hand of Glory is as follows. This mummified human hand hangs by a leather cord around a character's neck, taking up space as a magic necklace would. If a magic ring is placed on one of the fingers of the hand, the wearer benefits from the ring as if wearing it herself, and it does not count against her 2-ring limit. The hand can wear only 1 ring at a time. Even without a ring, the hand itself allows its wearer to use daylight and see invisibility each once per day.
Oh boy, another ring slot, because I can't just take a ring off and put it back on.
Maybe. Or if your hand gets chopped off. Anyway. Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right. We'll talk about this. So this is the real Hand of Glory, or one of the Hands of Glory, because they were known across Northern and Western Europe. This is well creepy and seeking folklore. So a woman named Sarah Tarnow has written extensively on the historical archaeology of the criminal corpse, and I am indebted to her for drawing my attention to this one. The example is the last known Hand of Glory to survive. It was donated to the Whitby Museum in 1935. So this is the same Whitby where Bram Stoker's Dracula was written and the Whitby Goth Festival happens. So all totally, yeah, and creepy. There's many stories about the Hand of Glory, but there are a few common elements. The hand is always a right hand. It's often taken from a newly dead criminal. The hand is preserved in a special ritual manner, described as mummified or preserved, and the fatty tissue of the hand is lit. Sometimes the fingers of the hand, or sometimes human fat is taken and you make a candle out of that, and then the hand holds the candle. and you light it on fire. When you do that, you produce a host of supernatural effects. So these include a deep slumber and all those people around the hand, apart from the person who lit it, enhanced detection abilities, being able to tell when people are secretly awake, finding hidden people, and so on. All these things that are designed to assist with burglary, theft, and murder. So the flame of the fingers, or the candle of the hand of glory, can only be extinguished with blood, of course, or blue milk, skimmed milk, can put it out. Milk is very important in folklore, but anyway, we can talk about that later. Anyway, back to the D&D hand of glory, just for a moment. Does anybody notice like how it basically looks like a proper hand of glory? It's a right hand, right? The fingers are disfigured in the same way, so maybe daylight would make sense. There's a hand of glory which shed light, the invisible, could reflect the enhanced detection ability. Anyway, what power in a wee corpse fragment? We would like to have a nice, peaceful death. That's why we say RIP. Sometimes we say it a little sarcastically, and sometimes with reference to one's meal, mobile phone, or career hopes. Notwithstanding current usage of the term, the fact that you want to wish for someone's remains to not be disturbed is important. How one dies and the social and cultural context of death can have an impact on how your remains are perceived in terms of the risk to your corpse being reanimated or something else untoward happening with it. As this varies extremely widely, if you're really curious about it, ask me about it tomorrow. We'll be at Catherine's Ask an Ethicist booth for the rest of PaX tomorrow, if we don't get time today.
In the Diversity Lounge.
In the Diversity Lounge. It's fair to say that people have feared death in part because it leaves their bodies vulnerable to outside control and potential misuse. In the UK and Ireland, people used what would be now called apotropaic magic, protective coffins, and other means to arrange protection for future corpses, including from people called resurrection men, who were employed to steal bodies for medical research. Here's medicine again. Right, one example of this is shown on the left here. That's a Braaaaiinnss jug, which was often used as a witch bottle. It's meant to prevent supernatural harm through being assembled and buried in a certain manner. These are buried with people, but also beneath housing foundations, beneath hearths, and so on. And that's not even getting into immaterial practices like prayer, curses, and so on. So the wealthy can invest in protective and alarmed coffins for many reasons: secure, multi-shelled coffins, protecting your burial goods from being robbed, your corpse against theft, and from anatomization. More on that soon. And sometimes people would install a mechanism to signal for help in case they weren't actually dead. People were very afraid of being buried alive. And you want that peace of mind as you face the ultimate awfully big adventure.
And speaking of adventure, zombie games are, as we saw earlier, all about adventure, action, survival, against the worst odds. Sometimes not with a plasma rifle, but just a brick. We chose The Last of Us as another best of zombie game, not only because it's an incredible game, one review called it an injustice to call it a zombie game, perhaps playing on this idea that zombies signal low quality entertainment, but because it presents a compelling narrative that we see elsewhere in classical zombie stories. You've got infection by a biological agent that seems unstoppable by medical science. You've got bravery, love, loyalty, and the possibility of redemption in the face of certain doom, and ample demonstration that humans can totally be the worst.
So, speaking of humans being both pretty amazing and really crap, anatomization or post-mortem dissection of remains was one of the primary means by which surgeons and medical practitioners learned their art and advanced scientific knowledge. Let's consider just how happy people would have been in the late medieval period and the early post-medieval period to have their corpses stolen and taken apart by some wealthy eccentric bloke in London if they were all in tune with these quite pervasive ideas about post-mortem punishment, to say nothing about dignity, privacy, and bodily protection. So this resistance was partly rooted in cultural ideas about how dead people would be treated and how long death takes. If you're Roman culture, the practice is maybe excarnation. That's going to differ from one that lovingly curates the remains of the dead, in which case, lots of problems. But so the moral good of this anatomical learning and medical innovation must at least in some ways outweigh that potential social evil. And how that advancement was accomplished was vital to obtaining public trust. In steps medical ethics. So the moral good of anatomical learning and medical innovation, many people trust doctors and scientists now, but not always. And there is a shift in these perceptions as we speak. Part of the reason that there is some trust is because systems of practice have been set up around integrity and ethics. Medical ethics are the field where the rubber met the road, historically, right? And the trajectory of public opinion can tell us a lot about how zombies in video games and vice versa are video game zombies that are created by irresponsible science, especially medical science. I mean, they are irresponsible science. They are skeevy resurrection men stealing corpses, and they present this nightmarish contagion in the next great global pandemic from which science may not be able to save us.
That's a bit heavy.
Heavy. So what do we have in place for technology and neuroscience initiatives like the Human Brain Project? These projects are the bleeding edge of research with the potential to accomplish amazing, incredibly worrying things like the zombie apocalypse. In the US, you guys have what's called ELSI, and that is taking into account the ethical, legal, and social implications of the research in addition to getting it to pass your average review board. In the EU, we have something better. we have responsible research and innovation, which is more comprehensive, and it's what we use as the applied ethical framework in the Human Brain Project. The Human Brain Project, which I'm now a part of, is a huge, enormous scientific endeavor. It began in 2013, and all going well, will run through to 2023. It's a neuroscience infrastructure project with 12 sub-projects, over 120 partners across the European Union. We also have partners here in the United States and other countries, and it's funded by the European Commission as a future and emerging technologies flagship.
What's that, Tio?
Right. It means we do all the things. Right? I mean, it means that we not only do we science, looking at machine intelligence, robotics, brain simulation, and modeling, neuromorphic computing, and so on, but we also dedicate a large amount of resources to data platforms and policies to deal with data that comes out of the sciencey bits. So other people's sciencey bits in the future, we're trying to anticipate the directions that we need to go and to do it well. Because chances are good that there's at least going to be collaboration across these emerging global neuroscience platforms. And they are happening. The Canadian Open Neuroscience Platform has just launched. Japan, China, you guys, everybody's got a big brain initiative. And the best way to move research forward is through innovative collaboration. So, one of the 12 sub-projects is called Ethics in Society. Some of us in the sub-project deal with ethics compliance, so running around with the stick, making sure that everybody kind of has their approvals in and doing those kinds of things, paperwork, licenses. But all of us in the sub-project spend our time focusing on ways to support innovation and improve research results through our own disciplinary perspectives. So making the research more relevant and trying to improve the social impact of it. And the HBP also opens up new questions about what it means to be human and the essence of consciousness.
For example, if we are all both P zombies and not P zombies, where does that leave potential AI developments beyond that kind of narrow machine learning workhorse AI? Is AI a form of zombie if it doesn't have consciousness, but it also kind of looks and talks and smells and everything like a human in the future potentially? I mean, if such an entity existed that was an artificial intelligence that was functionally equivalent or perhaps even better than a human being, then we'd all have a great deal of thinking to do, right? Would it actually be conscious? Is it a zombie? I don't know. It's all a bit, we don't quite know that yet. We need to start thinking about it, basically. And we need to think about what it is, what sort of agency we give to these things, and also what sort of responsibility we have to unleash them upon the world.
Or rather, we think about the unleashing.
Oh.
It's okay, I mean, right. Zombies are super fun to shoot and yet so much harder to hit than my teammates in Left 4 Dead. But depictions of zombies in video games to show us just how vitally important it is that we not only innovate, but innovate well. Whether you use the US or the EU-style approach to ethical neuroscience innovation, it's important to take the past into account, what's been done before, what went wrong, what succeeded, to think about the future and where we, as a global socially conscious society, want to go. All humans on research projects like the HPP and otherwise need to engage, have some conversations, and research responsibly.
So you guys have got a big brain project as well. I don't know how many zombies there are there, but you have one. It's a very, very big and super important mega project called the US Brain Initiative. And it's And basically, this is the clarion call to you guys to get involved in this, because large neuroscience projects need people to ask questions, give feedback, and help shape the trajectory of their research, and also to help the scientists to understand the perceptions of how their work is received. They have a neuroethics division that does this sort of work. You should check out their videos. They have there's the websites there. If you just Google US Brain Initiative Ethics, you'll probably find it. They announce events where you can potentially take time to go and help them develop their own research and get impact from, basically get feedback from real people, because this is really important. You guys get to have a say about how the science and the technology, particularly with regard to brains and brain research, goes. Terrifying. Not sorry.
The president
anyway, we just want to say thank you for sharing our adventure. You're welcome to come and speak to us in the Diversity Lounge tomorrow at Catherine's Ask an Ethicist booth. But for now, I can move on to questions.
All right, so I've got some questions here from the audience. Please, if you'd like to, if you want to ask questions, we've got a bit of time for questions now. So if you want to, if any of this is like prompted questions in your mind and you want to, the link is up there. The top question at the moment is: if a human bites a zombie, will the zombie turn into a human? Zombies aren't real.
Oh my God! What idiot asked that question?
Yeah. I guess it depends on how they were infected, is that, or how they became a zombie in the first place, right, Tim?
I think it depends on which game it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly this doesn't happen with philosophical zombies. You just are and you aren't at the same time, so there's no going back from that.
Oh, our favourite Stoic is back.
Oh, great. Using virtue ethics, could you make a case that even if you were turned into a zombie, you could still live well according to the zombie nature? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think you could. And this is actually probably similar to how we treat AI in the future, right? You know, there'd be this is off the top of my head right now, but I think you could definitely create a place for AI to coexist with humanity. I mean, there's that show, was it iZombie, where they kind of all live together and all that. I haven't actually watched it, but my husband does, and I've seen him watching it, and they seem to all get along okay for the most part. And so I'm sure there's something like that we could probably do, right?
That only happened recently.
How possible is the zombie apocalypse? It depends on what search words you use in Google. You wanted to have it. It's interesting because we're asking at the Ask an Ethicist booth. We're asking kind of how what are the games that you would sort of want to live in the future? Sort of what video game future would you like for humanity to have? And a couple of people definitely picked post-apocalyptic scenarios because a lot of us are ready for the reset switch. Yeah.
This is a good one. How does Brexit affect UK partners in the Human Brain Project? So at the moment, they've basically, the UK government, they've worked something out and they'll be funding through to the end of H2020 projects for the EU project nerds out there, which there must be at least one. Yeah. But anyway, so they have said that they'll be funding through to the end of projects that were funded under the H2020 program, so HBP will be fine.
So there's this question about trends over time in zombie depiction. I would have really liked to do this, and the reason, the question is, did you look at trends over time in zombie depiction? E.g., are we more or less afraid of medical mistakes leading to the apocalypse versus 20 years ago? So I have some kind of qualitative ideas on this, and the reason I didn't do a full kind of quantitative workup of this is because many zombie games are a series. Many of them are, and it's people want to stay true to an original idea, and so that cause will remain the same throughout the series. I mean, if you're just talking about plants versus zombies, right? So I would have really liked to do this. I would have needed to spend a great deal more time on it, and possibly my time as a research fellow on the Human Brain Project allows. If there's any academics in the room, you know what it's like, right? Okay. Everything is always on fire. So to spend time with the zombies is very difficult, but it would be very interesting to know.
If a cure to zombieism is found mid-apocalypse, does zombie disposal retroactively become murder? Yeah, that's a good one. That's a great one. Well, Okay, so this actually goes back to a medical ethics thing, right? Where actually, if you're trying to treat a disease, the idea is that you should be using the best known treatment, even if you think that the new treatment you want to try out is going to be like the best, amazing. So this happened, there's a really bad medical ethics case called the Tuskegee syphilis trials. If anyone's ever heard of those, they were really awful trials where basically the researchers wanted to see the progression of syphilis throughout all of the stages of syphilis, which is not a very nice disease to suffer from. When penicillin came in, which was an effective treatment for syphilis, these researchers deliberately said, don't treat these people because we want to see what happens at the end, right? And of course, at the end, they die horribly. And this was done. Yeah, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of racial elements to this as well, which is particularly troubling. But basically, medical ethics now says that you need to use the best, if something comes in and it's able to cure a particular disease, you need to basically get it in there as quickly as possible. And if there is a best known treatment, you also need to be doing that and compare that with the test case for the new treatment. So with that, I think basically, we should be curing zombieism as best we can, which may just be with the gun to the head, I don't know, but basically, or a brick, or a baseball bat, or whatever it is. I mean, I think personally, I would say that there's only so much you can do, and if something is actually found, that's really great, and probably the people who died for the cure, laud these heroes, because really that's probably what they were. And so, yeah, I think that's the best way to deal with that.